Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's a big one. We're going to be talking about the best albums and songs thus far in 2024. This is one of those years where putting together a mid-year list feels quite frustrating. It's normally one of my favorite lists to do, a quick microcosm of the year so far, a comfortable blend of great songs and great albums where I can take stock of where I am with respect to the rest of the music scene. But 2024 feels like one of those years where I'm on the outside looking in, and where I question the relevance of this list even coming into next week. Because, luck would have it, one of the biggest release weeks thus far in 2024 just so happened to be last Friday, and I just could not get to everything there, because it's also a holiday weekend, and there's just a hard limit on the number of hours in a day for me to work. I've long had to reconcile that I cannot get to everything, and that's saying something because I wasn't nearly as frustrated last year, and I've actually covered more albums by this point in the calendar year than I did in 2023. But I also think it feels a little bit different. In comparison with 2023's rocky emotional state coming out of the first half of that year, go watch my other year-end list videos if you want context, 2024 I felt a lot more grounded and focused and on my game, and thus paradoxically my picks feel more off the wall than ever before, especially in comparison with my peers in the rest of the field. For starters, I think when it comes to individual songs, I have heard more scattered highlights compared to full and consistent albums, which might translate to why I've seen so many folks herald 2024 as a great year for pop music, and honestly, I can't really agree. Hell, especially compared to last year, I have felt considerably underwhelmed by some of the biggest names in the pop I do like. Well, you'll see. I think country's actually had a slightly weaker year, with a lot of my picks leaning more on the folksier side, but even then, my top picks are not going to align with even the indie country consensus. Paradoxically, I actually think heavier music's had a ridiculously strong year. I don't really expect consensus in such a fragmented genre space. I think the surprise is just coming more from me liking so much of it. And that leaves me with the one genre where I actually might align with the popular opinion, and is that rap and hip-hop has had a legit great year, mainstream and otherwise. Really wish more of the otherwise category had posted their full lyrics online so I can include more of those albums here and actually review them. And that's the last thing. There are projects in my backlog from the first 6 months of 2024 that I just have not had a chance to fully cover, and I'm still hoping to. So if y'all come back to this in 6 months for my year end and find albums from the first half of 2024 that should have been covered here, well, this is what happens when you review 90 plus albums and still feel like you could have had space to cover 20 more if circumstances just aligned. Now, all of that is to say that this list feels kind of weird, even to me, and you're going to get a bunch of curveballs on it, and I know that specifically because a whole lot of you did not read or watch some of those reviews that contained my most glowing praise for albums in 2024. I've got the numbers in the back end to back that up. But hey, that means I could put y'all on some game that some of you might have missed, so alright, let's start this off with number 15. Okay, yes, I know it's an EP. I got 3 responses to that critique. Number 1, I put EPs on this list before. They gotta have a higher rate of killer to filler in order to make it, so it's fair. 2, the album structure's based off of runtime or number of tracks. It's flimsy as all hell these days. And 3, come on, it's nourished by time. I don't need a third reason. For those keeping their ears to the ground, Nourished by Time has been having a quietly strong year, getting signed to XL and steadily picking up bigger stages, with this EP even landing among some mainstream critics and outlets that might have missed the boat last year with Erotic Probiotic 2. And some of that added polish on this EP really shows through. 80s freestyle and hypnagogic pop with a sharper melodic gloss to augment their strong writing about struggling relationships, where the collapsing world and stress around him, it almost becomes a character in and of itself and feels strikingly prescient to Well, how we're all feeling. Now, do I wish it was longer and that there was more of it? Of course I do. But for everyone who lost their minds over, say, the newest Cindy Lee project, Diamond Jubilee, and might be looking for something texturally similar but with more focus and refinement, yeah, this should really be on your radar. Catch up already. Number 14. But on the topic of increasingly prescient and anxious projects with challenging textures exploring the world on the brink,
Pink balloons again. Pink balloons go pop. I love these balloons, 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 I love these balloons again.
Ekko Astral has been one of the biggest surprises for me in 2024. The sort of DC hardcore and noise rock that beefed up their sound to a nightmarish Kafka-esque swell, but didn't compromise their melodies or competent mixing in order to do it, aka the big reason that the new Knocked Loose album is not on this list, among others. But simply categorizing this as extended, overly online, doom-scrolling nightmare fuel, it's doing it a disservice, not just in picking up elements of spoken word and even no wave in some of the more intricate production, but also writing that serves to challenge the audience that might think consumption under late capitalism, consuming leftist stuff, is performing virtue, and also just how much some people would be willing to compromise that integrity for the right escape, and how much folks really want to avoid discussing their own price while ignoring how that's a devil's deal that's not extended to everyone, especially those who are more openly queer or on the edges. It could very well fall into a bit of a nihilistic spiral. Hell, I find it hard to blame any of those in the States right now who might be in a similar state, but at least on this album, solidarity and community will win out, that even if it's bleak, folks might be able to hold on to each other, they might be able to get through all of this. It's a very heavy, angry album, but justifiably so, and with so much intricacy in the lyrics and production, I think these are balloons that are worth letting loose. Number 13. So let's continue in the territory of complicated, texturally ambitious projects, and here's one that feels like it's been slept on by a lot of folks who would normally get on board, maybe because of how low-key it is or the slightly strange release. Let's change some of that, shall we? Yeah, this was another big surprise for me in 2024. The long-awaited debut album / compilation from Tapir, an English experimental rock collective that stays on the quieter side of indie folk, 60s psychedelic rock, even electronica in structuring its winsome, thoughtful pieces, full of traces of jagged smolder and some pensive, existential musings. On some level, it comes across as much of a theater piece as it does an album with that distinct 3-act structure, an album deeply rooted in meditative, qualitative folklore, but also challenging that nostalgia and the winding search for purpose, where the echo across time shows just how much that search for purpose, past and present, is leaving more questions than answers. It's always been with us. It's definitely an album that evades easy analysis, and admittedly this was higher on my list throughout the year until I realized just how often it would slip into the background for me. But it was a persistent and pleasant background because there was something about the blend of jittery drum machines and acoustics and touches of baroque pop swell that kept me on board. Now this is the sort of thoughtfully weird folk that would have just run up the numbers in the mid-2000s, and if you're nostalgic for that, and then you want to be interrogated about that nostalgia, I think Tapir is what you need. At the very least, it's familiar enough for you to realize nothing quite like it. Now this takes us to our usual venture into songs that are from projects that just missed the cut in 2024. Or for this year, a couple singles that will never be attached to any project, but deserve some discussion and acclaim anyway, that I have talked about either here or on my side channel, Billboard Breakdown. So let's get it started with From She's Back, Like That by Mary Steele.
I didn't mean to love them like that.
From Saviors, Coma City by Green Day.
Eyes dead on arrival under smoky skies. Coma City,
Mannequin, Illusions Inside by Kairos. From Coming Home, One of Them Ones by Usher.
That shit that'll have you all inside of your feelings, confessing your love for the one. This right here, gonna make you put a ring on it, making calls about your feelings, confessing your love.
From Be Right Here, Other Side of the Light by Blackberry Smoke.
Don't worry about the darkness, it's just the other side of the light.
And from Loss of Life, featuring Christine and the Queens, Dancing in Babylon by MGMT.
Gone, dancing in Babylon.
Alrighty, let's get back to the list with number 12. You know, I said country had a weaker year overall, but I think that's my context in terms of covering more of the genre than the majority. The fact that I have multiple country albums on this list at all, it's going to be more than some will ever have over the course of years. And hell, in this case, for this sophomore album, you know what? I think that pop crossover, only a matter of time.
Everybody's hooked on something. Second chances are a second coming. Some kind of savior to say you're so unique. A new mantra every other week. All my friends are finding new beliefs.
Katie Pruitt's Expectations was one of the most wildly underrated albums of 2020. A queer coming-of-age story coaxed through softer romantic textures and a lot of quiet introspection. But through a change in producers, Mantras is considerably more confrontational right from the opening tracks. The guitars are louder, the grooves are more palpable, and Katie Pruitt brings the balance of stridently charged examinations of religion and belief against their own musings of what the hell they're even searching for, if the answers can even be found. There are more existential musings on this list than I originally expected. Now, in retrospect, this album feeling kind of front-loaded is a little frustrating. The nuanced pictures on the back half can just slip out of focus and memory. The energy definitely peters out. And I truly hope this was not done in an attempt to chase the whole boy genius wave. But when Katie Pruitt has some of their best ever songs to date in that front half, it is really hard to complain. This album was slept on by way too many folks. I recommend y'all change that. This is a mantra that is worth repeating. Number 11. Okay, I get it now. I'm on board. And for once, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
I'm destined, I'm dead. Just trying to survive.
This is another case of an artist getting the right look at the right time and having the album to really capitalize on that momentum. And while no songs from Trail of Flowers managed to snag Sierra Ferrell another spot on the Hot 100, it is precisely the sort of release that's primed to break her through, and it's great to boot. She still has her eclectic genre bending across Celtic folk, bluegrass, and more traditional country, but it feels a lot more focused in service of much stronger compositions that are built for a bigger audience. Still warmly textured and endlessly inviting, but where the adventure feels like it's at a bigger scope and scale. And all of that works for rock-solid fundamentals. Ferrell's trilling delivery is endlessly charming, her fiddle pickup remains outstanding, and while I can tell the theatricality is doing some real heavy lifting over some of the lyricism that can paint in broad strokes, she is still painting one hell of a canvas with a passion that's as dangerous and thrilling as it comes. It's the sort of album that has me really convinced I need to see her live, because I can only imagine how much stronger some of these songs will play within that audience. But in the meantime, Sierra Ferrell has established herself as a force to be reckoned with, both in indie country and maybe breaking through, and there's a winding, bountiful trail ahead. If you haven't heard it, check it out. Number 10. So the flip side to me saying that this year hasn't felt quite as satisfying for me with pop is the record that did wind up here. And what feels increasingly bizarre is just how far I feel out of step with my contemporaries and peers. Not the public at large who have embraced this to a frankly frightening degree, but hey, wouldn't be the first time they got some mixed messages.
Running with my dress unbuttoned, screaming, but daddy, I love him. I'm having his baby. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces.
It's still a little bit insane to me that this album is doing as well as it is. Yeah, the machine's a factor, and Taylor Swift's billionaire status likely means she's too big to fail, but the Tortured Poets department seemed designed to test that mess to its zenith. And in this case, I'm specifically putting the original disc here, not the anthology, that's trying to be more respectable, and that's increasingly less of what I want to hear from Taylor Swift. This album might want to hide behind the irony or satire, but it proves the axiom of what one might say ironically, they often believe unironically, and it shows up in the art. And the moments in which the most overexposed and increasingly unsympathetic woman is flying off the moral guardrails, that's compelling for the insecurity and ego and intoxication and passionate mistakes. Taylor Swift may have built her career on relatability, and thus there is a sweet, sweet irony in that when she is at her worst and least populist is when I personally find her most relatable. And when you pair that with some really underrated songcraft and a run of deep cuts that are among her best, hell, cut this in the anthology down to the best songs, you would have her best album. I know it's the controversial pick on this list, the one I'm not supposed to make. But hey, some of us are just modern idiots, right? So while some of y'all stew on that for a bit, here's a selection of songs from albums that you might think deserve the spot, but miss the cut. From Blue Lips, Yearn 101 by Schoolboy Q.
The stripes ain't earned, I'ma get it right now, I ain't waiting no turn. Got a brand new house, tryna avoid my hurt. About 6 point something in the field like church. Or the hood got whack and the set went turn. Got a 488 in the glide like Kurt.
From Bleachers, Tiny Moves by Bleachers.
What you go round and round, tiniest moves you make, watching my whole world shake. Look who's on the edge again, on the edge again.
From Digest Volume 4, She Put Sunshine by Jacob Collier.
She illuminates me, and if she ever gets close to me, well, it's plain to say she incinerate me, but I don't mind her giving me her sunshine smile.
From Deeper Well, Anime Eyes by Casey Musgraves.
Anime eyes, a million little stars bursting into hearts in my anime eyes.
From We Don't Trust You, featuring The Weeknd, Young Metro by Future and Metro Boomin. And from Cowboy Carter, featuring Miley Cyrus, Two Most Wanted by Beyonce.
Whoa, I'll be your shotgun rider till the day I die.
Yeah, I'm gonna let y'all digest some of that. Okay, you ready? Alright, let's get back to number 9. I was gonna say that let's get back to something respectable, but I honestly think the artist in question might take that as a slight, especially if we are going off the beaten path yet again.
Yeah, the sparrow on the wing taught me to find you, and the possum knows his own mind more than I do. I'm here for all the love that I can stand. Take me to Critterland.
So this is another criminally underrated album from the fringes of indie country and folk, but truth be told, I should have been singing Willi Carlisle's praises much earlier than just now, especially as Critterland might not even be his best. But when it's this full of homespun, bracingly raw minimalism, where amidst the rich organic tones, Willi Carlisle tells stories from the very fringe, where those left behind by the system scrabble to make do and process loss however they can, with the fatalistic questions of what it's all worth paired with with Carlisle's achingly spare theatricality, it makes for some very difficult but very human moments. No, it's not as funny as Carlisle's earlier projects. Yes, even with that title, I get it. But it's because the laughs don't always come as easy out there right now, and the gut punch of the smaller moments, that can mean the world. And yeah, it's still devastatingly effective. This dropped very early in 2024. I know it slipped out of the picture for a lot of folks, yet I'm gonna argue you should go back and find it anyway. It's really worth it. Number 8. But you know, on the topic of achingly queer, country-adjacent songwriting from the desperate fringes that is both deeply human and incredibly heartbreaking,
I couldn't believe them when they say, watch out. I'm becoming the kind of girl that they warn me about.
Not gonna lie, Alyssa Segarra's newest project had a return to their roots. It slipped a little bit for me this year. It's legitimately great. Their delivery is intense and raw and nails the heartfelt reflections on their rough past, the loss of their father, and a very unstable and uncertain future. The definition of a songwriter's album that never bothers to carry that pretension, the world is too close to the brink to bother. What I think I appreciate the most is that Segarra's success has left them in a complicated place. They feel more kinship with the outsiders who are at the very bottom who've just learned to survive, not a more stable world that might offer them some creature comforts but little emotional respite for generational trauma they've endured. They're not even sure they belong there. I'm not sure I would call this their magnum opus. The Navigator's ambition, texture, and stylism is firmly there for me, but this is one of the most welcome returns to form I heard in 2024, a project that is so even-keeled, it catches you off guard for how bracing and emotionally charged it really is. They're right that the past is still alive. It infuses all of this. Number 7. Not gonna lie, I'm a little shocked that this album has grown so much for me this year. Maybe it's a sign of how much rap that I've really liked, but when you have one of the funniest MCs to touch a mic in recent years, paired with such a keen eye to improve off of his debut...
I wonder if they could tell I'm a dope boy. My first toy was a scale, I had no choice. Money talk, I had no voice. My mom was gone, I had no joy. I wonder if they could tell I'm a dope boy. On second thought, don't tell I'm a dope boy. I wonder if they could tell I'm a dope boy. On second thought, don't tell I'm a dope boy.
I remember in 2021, when I first reviewed Dope Game Stupid, I said Bruiser Wolf had a lot of potential, from the insanely funny punchlines to his taste in textured, sample-heavy production. I wanted to hear more sonic diversity, maybe a little bit more depth emotionally overall, and while I wasn't really sure of the latter originally, the fact that this album just kept on growing on me with every single punchline and listen shows that Bruiser Wolf has a lot more to offer. Not only did the production and the guest features pick up a broader diversity of tones, but there was this more weathered, emotional balance to the project, chronicling the misadventures of a life that he had to live to survive, but an honest longing for something a little more, something better, but also with a light enough touch and a genuine sense of humor to actually balance it out, make it very approachable. Yeah, it can be silly and irreverent and go a little bit too far, but it's never cartoonish or feels inauthentic. The sort of wry humor that comes from experiences that are so absurd you often have to laugh, where he teases some deeper implications behind them rather effectively. And what's thrilling about this album is that I still think he's got more room to grow. And when the fundamentals and wit are so rock solid, the melodic hooks in both his production and flow really had a lot of legs for me. Bruiser Wolf proved that so long as he's telling those stories, I'm gonna keep on listening. Great album. And now, on to another slice of songs that are excellent, but not on projects that made this list, or projects at all, come to think of it, from Efang Op Shit by Glorilla.
Ain't got no business fucking, ducking off in B&Bs. We can't be seen in public, fucking with this op nigga. And I think I love.
From Blip, Smarter Than I Am by Not Really and The Expert.
Smarter than I am. I wanna be smarter than I am. But if I get smarter, will I wanna be smarter than I am? I wanna be smarter than I am. But if I get smarter, will I wanna be smarter than I am? I wanna be smarter than I am. But if I get smarter, what then? Huh?
From Undefeated, Ceasefire by Frank Turner.
I still stand between you and ceasefire.
From Anniversary, One Night Stand by Adeem the Artist.
I believed it then, but now it's different. He wants a one-night stand. I want a life full of nights with him.
From Giant Formula, Lost in Babylon by Sundays.
But you must see Babylon, and I'm not your Babylon, but you are mine. Wish I could see the world that you're at.
And from, well, the beef that shook hip-hop to its very core, Euphoria by Kendrick Lamar.
That you walk, the way that you talk, I hate the way that you dress. Surprised you wanted that feature request. You know that we got some shit to address. I even hate when you say the word nigga, but that's just me, I guess. Some shit just cringeworthy. Ain't even gotta be deep, I guess.
Alright, over halfway through this list, let's get to number 6. There are albums I think get slept on for bad, likely systemic reasons. I hear a lot of folks rant about the modern wave of women in rap who say that they only talk about sex or tricking or flexing or catty bullshit, seemingly unaware of the male counterparts doing the exact same thing, nor willing to accept the shades of gray within that subject matter, at least not when it comes from a woman. But when we actually have a woman rapping with more technical prowess and diversity in the subject matter, I don't know, I'm seeing a lot less of y'all cheerleading. But you know, no need to cry about it.
I went rock boy to hot boy to hit boy to big boys. Y'all threw some rocks at me. I threw back asteroids. Y'all crazy. I'm crazy.
This is Rapsody's best album. She made the best use of her years away in order to craft her most diverse and personal project to date that proves not only can she wash the majority of her peers of any gender, but also do so in the process of healing and growth as an artist. Not only does the project leap across sounds and prove just how capable she is with nearly all of them, not only does it show a level of challenging emotional introspection around relationships and sexuality and her own status in the rap game that reflects the hard kind of self-aware healing, but also proves that she could play the mainstream game just as well with material that's just as sexually charged and deliver in spades too. Now this is by no means perfect, there are rough edges and a few questionable choices in framing and content, but in getting to the most difficult parts of herself, Rapsody took a great risk as a black woman playing this hierarchical game and lands both dominance and solidarity. It's a criminally underrated album. It's long in coming. I'm just happy she was able to deliver such a leap forward. If you haven't heard it, give it a shot. Number 5. There are times in assembling these lists where I feel like I gotta provide a lot of justifications. See earlier in this video. This is not one of those times. Possibly one of Alcest's best albums, and easily one of their most striking. Until we get that next Unrequited album, this is easily the most gorgeous black metal I have heard in years. And while there's a part of me that doesn't just want to pigeonhole this as just black metal, when it goes into post-rock or shoegaze or post-metal, there's a thicker groove and muscle that's underscoring these compositions that highlight just how stirring this brand of black gaze can be. And when you pair it with a gloriously tragic story of loss and transcendence, Neige once again proved that his unique formula has legs for what could be their best album since their debut. Now this is the most recent project to make my list that I've reviewed. Man, I'm thrilled I got to it before the mid-year. If you haven't had a chance to hear it, or even if you're a little bit spooked by black metal's sound or reputation, I think it's a jump on point. And man, it's so worth it. Number 4. One thing I have noticed about the albums on this list is that a chunk are reaching for what might be described as the most of the artist, for better and for worse. Sometimes that manifests as their most personal or emotional album, sometimes it's their most messy, and yet sometimes it's the apotheosis of what we knew he was capable of the entire time.
In the ghetto, I'm a Martian, crash landing. In them dirty ass apartments, stay shining. I forever be the hardest, big time. Like the niggas in New Orleans, real shining. Like the niggas from Manolia. Chopper City in the ghetto, I'm a soldier. Where they at, get the gas, huh? Where they at, get the gas.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say it. This is Vince Staples' best album. It's better than FM, better than Big Fish Theory, better than the self-titled The Ramona Park Broke My Heart. And the funny thing is that across the board, if you listen to what Vince Staples has said in interviews or on his Netflix series, that's by no means surprising. This album is lean and ruthlessly clever. It's funny, but more incidentally in passing. And the more you think about it, the darker the jokes get. The production finally nails the balance of West Coast swagger and a more textured, weathered groove, and it's utterly vicious in targeting the commodification of the black experience in mainstream rap, only expanding on themes from FM, and most importantly, it offers the sort of complicated glimpse behind the curtain to him that shows the human cost that has been taken to succeed in these dark times. Vince Staples' art can almost feel deceptive in the simplicity, but the reality is that there's no deception beyond the one that one might choose to engage with in his work, and with this project, there's no more room for obfuscation. An absolutely bleak listen, because, let's be real, his brand of realism in today's day and age is too honest not to be bleak, but it's absolutely one of the best. It's highly deserving of all the acclaim it's received, and if you think it's too simple, well, sometimes it's just in plain sight. You have to be willing to look. And that takes us to our last group of songs that did not make albums on this list, but I think they're worth praising regardless. From Norther, Hummingbird by Shane Smith and the Saints. From Clancy, Midwest Indigo by 21 Pilots.
Yeah, we're tight on time. Reaching out on my way home. It could be so cold, I'll try again. You make me sad and second guess myself. It could be so cold, Midwest Indigo.
From Where I've Been Isn't Where I'm Going, Let It Burn by Shabuzi. From Brat, So I by Charlie XCX.
I love singing these songs you left behind, and I know you always said it's okay to cry, so I know I can cry, so I cry.
From Hummingbird, Pretty Please by Carly Pierce.
Be the one you've only dreamed of, a woman like me, but you ain't been any, so tell me I'm pretty, please.
And finally, from Fathers and Sons, Take Me Out to the Ball Game by Luke Combs.
I guess maybe things are different now, but Daddy, can't you still take me out to the ball game?
All right, final three. It's gonna get interesting. Number 3. One thing in common that the next two entries have is that it seems like nobody was checking for these albums. Well, either the album or my reviews. And in the first case, it's utterly mystifying. Even outlets I expected to be covering this and singing its praises seem to have completely passed it by. Time to correct some of that, shall we?
Life is all about timing. Love is wild and blinding. Every road is winding. So let the good times roll.
Folks, this is what I have been waiting for Wade Bowen to deliver since I first started covering him nearly 10 years ago. He's run up the score with great work, especially with Randy Rogers, but I knew his more nuanced and thoughtful approach to Texas country, it would show dividends if the production just stuck the landing, and with Flyin, he did just that. Incredibly warm and textured, neo-traditional to a fault, but also dabbling near southern rock and funk and Americana, showing the sort of experimentation he last really touched launched in 2018 with solid ground, and he's got an incredibly strong crop of songs here. What I love about this album is that Wade Bowen gets the loose Texas swagger and the anthemic bravado, but he balances out effectively with emotional complexity and maturity. It is a familiar taste, but there's refinement and depth that you might not expect if you don't know. This was my comfort album in 2024, the sort of consistently solid release where the quality almost feels unassuming until you reach the end of the project and realize there's not a bad or even lukewarm song on here. So much of this is just fantastic, and thus it is my favorite country album of 2024 thus far. And while there's some stiff competition coming, including from Wade Bowen himself with another collab with Randy Rogers, right now, this is Flyin' High. Number 2. On the flip side, I'm not surprised this has gone under the radar for a lot of folks, even self-professed underground hip-hop fans. His last solo album was in 2015, and while he had 2 critically appreciated projects in the late 2010s, I mean, hell, that can almost feel like a different time, given how the genre has evolved and mutated, but he's had a reason for being gone for so long. Like with Rapsody, his journey was also one of healing, although a little bit more literal, and now he's back. And we have this.
Too many styles for me to engage a debate, y'all. Ain't in the same league, don't keep the same score. I seen the legends rock, I seen the greats fall. I watched them turn it all to fantasy baseball. Fantasy baseball, fantasy baseball, fantasy baseball. But I ain't come to play with y'all. You never rated me, but then I kinda hated y'all. You never made my team in fantasy baseball.
It's rare that a rapper, especially in the underground, delivers an album that may well be his best, but it's also his most loose and charming and accessible along the way. B. Dolan's writing can be heavy, almost uncomfortably introspective, and there's a lot of that here as well, but it's also tempered with his best ever hooks and grooves, maybe even production as well, where not only does he prove he can still be quite funny, but there's also a lot of candid insight along the way. What becomes very apparent is how much distaste he has for the structures within hip-hop that would place or categorize or confine him, especially when they only serve the cheap purposes of capitalism or petty machismo, and thus B. Dolan endeavors to deconstruct all of them, not only by highlighting his own position within those exploitative structures and being somewhat self-aware and going deeper, but also with the care and empathy for those who could save themselves, but also punch back hard at those who aren't willing to try. And I love the structure of this album. It runs just under a half hour and not a song feels wasted. Every track has a distinct identity and facet to build to the themes of breaking the normalized systems of oppression, alongside fostering the sort of community that would actually stand with him in that. Thus far, best rap album of 2024 in a really strong year. Maybe B. Dolan's best. I compare it alongside The Failure. I mean, you probably haven't heard this, but you really should. And finally, number 1. Truth be told, I've struggled with this list in general this year, mostly because I don't think there's an obvious standout that could just run away with the entire year. Now, I could well be missing something. Again, see the backlog and the stack of releases that I just need to get through that dropped a couple of days ago. But it's also been since 2015 when the album that tops my year-end list didn't come from the first half of the given year. And there's a strange feeling in 2024 that it's still anyone's game. There's no runaway contender. But if you want the closest thing to it, you have a mountain to climb.
Come with me to the milestone. Above you. Milestone. Let it control you.
In 2022, I remember feeling so stunned that everything had not only returned to quality with raw data feel, but possibly was returning to the heights of their best alongside Get to Heaven. And to put it bluntly, Mountainhead is the follow-through and the slight return to progressive rock that showed there were still further heights to climb, taking the refined melodic core of their alternative dance experimentation and pairing it with their grandest conceptual experiment to date. And from there, you get the absolute best kind of of prog rock. Not only are the songs diverse and colorful, even offering enough ear candy for the listeners, to the point where I had made the joke, they kind of remind me a little bit of 21 Pilots, except with a graduate degree. But the thematic core here, it's layered and challenging, and the exploration of late capitalism from every single angle. For those who are laboring in the middle in increasingly isolated and uncaring corporate structures that are girded by a lot of commodified religion, to those who are plumbing the depths at the bottom for animal spirits that can bring some of their own feral danger, to the dazed Hall of Mirrors at the very top, all the while highlighting every angle that modern masculinity is co-opted, exploited, and weaponized in that process. So yeah, it's dense and distinctly weird, but it rarely feels like that. Where if you're just looking for killer grooves and experimentation, you're gonna get it, but delving deeper reveals so much more. It's bold, it's populist, it's witty, it's emotionally charged. It's an album that absolutely nails all of my criteria for great political art, and not only do I think it's everything's best album, as of right now, best album of 2024. I can only hope more is coming to challenge it. We'll have to see. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more or check out more reviews, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, and subscribe. Especially down in the comments, leave what your list of the best albums of the year are, and guess how many of them that I conveniently missed or just may have avoided. Beyond that though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If you all want to get involved in helping support the channel, get albums on my schedule for the second half of the year, or, just yell at me on my Discord, link to my Patreon is right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, I understand, just the options available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.